I'm Dr. Paul Cohen. I'm a dermatologist. I've been practicing dermatology for 22 years. One of the many conditions I treat is hyperhidrosis, or excess sweating. We know that about 3% of the population suffers from hyperhidrosis. That means about 1.2 million Canadians are suffering with this very treatable condition. Usually the incidence is equal in both men and women, and it can start at different stages of life. Some people might notice excess sweating in their teenage years. Sometimes people won't notice the problem until they're in their mid-20s. In any case, it can be a severely debilitating problem, and fortunately there are many treatments that we have to help these people. Of note, about 75% of people who suffer from hyperhidrosis don't get treatment for the condition. Sometimes they don't have access to a dermatologist, and sometimes patients are embarrassed to talk about this problem with their physician. People aren't aware that there are a lot of treatments to this very common problem, and we hope that people feel comfortable speaking to their healthcare provider, as there are many great, effective options to treat this condition. So, everybody sweats, and it's normal to sweat when we're overheated and we're in a hot climate, but some people sweat excessively regardless of the temperature. And this sweat can really affect their day-to-day activities. Sometimes the sweating can be barely noticeable, and sometimes it can be very noticeable in terms of soaking their clothes. Their skin can be wet. And again, depending on how bad it is, it can have a negative effect on their daily activities, their self-esteem. So for example, people who might be embarrassed to shake a hand because the hand feels wet, people who would be embarrassed to raise their hand in a classroom because they have excessive sweating under their armpit, people who need to change their clothes regularly during the day because their clothes are soaked with sweat, people who are embarrassed to speak publicly because they're sweating excessively. And it really depends on the person, but there can be a large effect on your day-to-day activity. And if it's affecting how you work, how you act, how you socialize, then we know that sweating is a problem for you. Excess sweating can occur in several locations. It can occur in the armpits, which is a common area. It can occur on the hands. It can occur on the body. It can occur on the forehead. And depending on where it is, it can have different effects on your daily activities. There are people who have excess hand sweating who, again, might be embarrassed to shake a hand. It can affect the type of work they do. If you're doing any fine motor skills and your hands are soaking wet, you can be smudging paper when you're writing. It can have a huge effect on your performance, not just socially, but at work as well. People who sweat a lot from their armpits, it can affect their clothes. It can affect their confidence speaking, being out in social engagements. It can affect people's confidence just interacting with other people. For some people, it can cause extreme depression and mood changes and anxiety. Sometimes there's a medical cause that causes excess sweating. For example, thyroid disease, certain medications, drug use. Most of the time, we don't know what causes excess sweating, and this is what we call idiopathic. We're not sure the cause. And for some unknown reason, the nervous system is overactive and causing us to produce excess sweat. Oftentimes, we'll do some investigations to make sure there's no easy treatable cause, but most of the time, we don't have a definable cause and we treat the symptoms. For those of you that have problems with sweating, it's important that you realize that there are many safe and effective treatments available. Don't be afraid to talk to your healthcare provider about this problem. It's something that we can treat. We have safe, efficacious medications, and there's no reason for you to suffer any longer. So depending on your level of sweating problem, there are lots of options for you to choose from. If you have mild sweating issues, you can go to the pharmacy and pick up a topical product like Drysol. If your sweating isn't well controlled by products like this, it's important that you speak to your dermatologist or healthcare provider about other options.